I think we'll just go ahead and get started, and I'll wish you a good morning and a welcome to our annual get-together every May that we call RACO. I'm Lawrence Brewer, and I am in the Office of the Chief Records Officer at NARA, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to the festivities today. We have a great program. Our theme this year is Forging Ahead, Meeting the Challenges of Electronic Records in an Open Government. And it is a timely one. We have some good presentations lined up for you. In the morning sessions, you'll hear a little bit about what's going on at the National Archives and the transformation that we're undergoing. And then after that, we will have a panel on social media records and some best practices and some thought, both within NARA, without NARA, on how the records related to social media are being managed, which should be very useful and informative. And then in the afternoon, we have in our last panel, and we strategically placed it last on the program to make sure everyone stays on a nice day here in May, a good panel on some practical lessons, some case studies on little things, quick wins that everyone can do to move your records management programs forward. So that should be very interesting, some good case studies there. And then in the middle of the day, of course, we will have our Archivist Achievement Awards. We're doing a number of things differently this year. As you know, because of the budget challenges we've all been experiencing this year, we're not charging any fees for RACO this year, so that's something nice. Yeah, applause for thank you. It's a good time for the applause. So in planning this free RACO, we were trying to come up, well, we had our theme, and we wanted to come up with a motto, and wanted to put it on the program, but we ended up not putting it on the program. So the motto this year is RACO 2011, light on your wallet, but not on content. So another thing we're doing differently this year is the Archivist Achievement Awards. In the past, we've always done them at lunch as part of the luncheon program, and we would have the archivist come down and say a few words to award the agencies. But then we wouldn't have any presentations from the award winners. So it wasn't really the kind of forum where we could have some interchange between the attendees and the awardees and see in a little bit more detail about what these award winners did to warrant the award. So this year we are going to do that. After lunch, we are going to have the two Archivist Achievement Award winners on stage and do some presentations about what they did to warrant the Archivist Achievement Award, and the archivist will be making some remarks beforehand. So that should be very interesting. If you would, please help me welcome Tom Mills, who is NARA's first Chief Operating Officer, who will moderate the first panel today.
Welcome to the McGowan Theater. My name is Tom Mills. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for the National Archives and Records Administration. And I might add, I have the distinction of being the first Chief Operating Officer for the National Archives. So I'm still learning about the job. We want to talk to you this morning a little bit about what you may have heard is going on in the National Archives, which we refer to as our transformation. I've also heard there are other agencies, or at least parts of agencies, that are also undergoing transformations, and some of them are similar to ours. About 1 year ago, the Archivist of the United States, David Ferriero, whom you'll meet later, challenged National Archives and Records Administration staff to develop dramatic ways to improve the way we deliver programs and services to our customers. Between July of last year and January of this year, there were two NARA staff teams, task forces, that led an agency-wide effort to propose ways to refocus our capacities and our organizational culture to better achieve our strategic objectives and our mission, especially given the challenges, as we all know, in the rapidly evolving social media world. The task forces involve staff by using many more of those social media tools. We have 44 locations around the country, so we try to engage all the staff in developing ways to transform the National Archives. Then in February, this past February, the Archivist approved the plan to transform NARA. The plan is available on our website. Since then, we've set about implementing this transformation. It includes restructuring primarily to have customer-facing units where we used to be organized geographically. One of those customer-facing units is agency services, and you will hear more about that from our panelists in a minute. The other major units are researcher services, which of course serves primarily the users of archival accessioned records. Then there's a organizational entity with a pretty long name, Legislative Archives, Presidential Libraries, and Museum Services, which primarily serves general public, people who visit us for educational programs and events and tour our museums. In addition, the Federal Register continues as an entity, and then there are two internal support organizations, one Business Support Services and the other Information Services. We also created an expanded human capital office reporting directly to the Archivist, and that was a reflection of the value placed on all the staff who work at the National Archives in our 44 facilities. I do want to say, however, that the transformation is not really about restructuring. It's more about changing individual attitudes and changing our organizational culture to achieve what we in the National Archives refer to as our 6 transformational pillars or outcomes that we aspire to achieve over the next 3 to 5 years. This is not a short-term, let's change the structure approach. It is a long-term transformation that's going to take several years to fully achieve, and then we hope will endure more or less permanently, as much as you can in a government organization. Just quickly, the 6 transformational pillars are, first, everybody in the organization works as one NARA, where each individual understands what everybody else in the agency does, and we all row together, as they say. Second is to be out in front, especially with regard to managing electronic records and using information technology. We want to be known as an agency of leaders, where every single staff person has the opportunity and, in fact, is expected to make decisions on the ground that help improve delivery of services. We want to become a great place to work because people are our most important resource. Fifth, we want to be a customer-facing organization that serves you and our other customers as best we can. And finally, we want to be an open NARA, open both internally and externally by being more transparent and by seeking external input into our into solving our problems and delivering our services. So, as I said, one of the new entities that was established, and in fact was just stood up, as they say, about a month ago, is an entity called Agency Services. The new head of Agency Services, or in our parlance now, the Agency Services Executive, is Jay Visenko. Many of you know Jay, formerly Director of the Information Security Oversight Office. Also, as part of the Agency Services area is the Chief Records Officer, Paul Wester. The designation of a Chief Records Officer for the federal government is an important visible sign of the importance of improving records management and being more customer-facing with you all. And third, the director of the Federal Records Center program, David Weinberg, who's been directing that program since it became the revolving fund over 10 years ago. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Jay, who will describe a little bit more about how agency services is transforming their work.
Thank you, Tom. Good morning. It's a pleasure to have the opportunity today for the first time to speak to such a broad audience as far as what agency services is, what we intend to do. I think we have a slide. If we could go ahead and advance it real quickly. I hate to put an org chart up, but I'm going to kind of give you the org chart view in order to help you understand the whole organization. And there are more than 1,600 people in this organization the sole reason they're here is to ultimately support you as our primary customers. The idea of even naming this organization, Agency Services, was one that even had some controversy, particularly if you look at the three boxes, and I'm going to get my right and left wrong here. The three boxes to the one end of there, the Information Security Oversight Office, the National Declassification Center, and the Office of Government Information Services. All three of those entities have some oversight responsibilities, and of course, NARA has some oversight responsibilities with respect to records management. There was some concern that oversight within an organization that is intended to serve the needs of agencies was sort of backwards. But I think if you really think about why we do oversight, it's ultimately intended to help you achieve whatever your agency's mission is, particularly with respect to records management. So sort of, our goal from an oversight perspective is to enable you to succeed in the records management area, not to beat you up, not to serve to make your life difficult. So from that perspective, it makes perfect sense to me to have these oversight entities as part of agency services. So I'm not going to talk much about those three, except to give you a quick overview of what they are, who they're led by, and then we'll spend most of our time talking about the Office of the Chief Records Officer under Paul and the Federal Records Center program under David. So the Information Security Oversight Office provides oversight on behalf of the President for the classification, safeguarding, and declassification systems in government. They're also responsible for the sensitive but unclassified or controlled unclassified information program. It's part of the National Archives. We have points of contact in most of the agencies that are represented here. And I think as you see, as I move through this, that we actually all along have had multiple points of contact, multiple points of entry and communication with your agencies. And one of the things we're trying to do here is to streamline that and make it more efficient and effective. The Information Security Oversight Office, right now, a search is on for a new director. We hope to have that resolved in the near future. The National Declassification Center is led by Cheryl Schenberger. The National Declassification Center is ultimately responsible for making records that are more than 25 years old available to the public, working through the declassification process. But of course, the National Archives isn't making declassification decisions on these documents. All of the departments and agencies are making those decisions. So ultimately, this work is a partnership between the agencies and the National Archives to protect information that's still sensitive and otherwise make records available to the public. And of course, the records issue is very important there because the only records that are subject to automatic declassification are those that are permanent. So agencies have to understand which of their records are permanent and which are temporary in order to understand their status there. The Office of Government Information Services is led by Miriam Nisbet. That's essentially an oversight and support entity for the Freedom of Information Act. It's a relatively new and small organization. We're looking to see that work grow. But in essence, while they serve as an ombuds role for the FOIA process and interact with individual requesters, they can't process any of those cases. They can't work any of them without working with the departments and agencies who are getting the initial FOIA requests. So again, it's a partnership. Those three organizations retain some unique authorities. They retain their access directly to the Archivist of the United States when necessary, but bringing them together inside this organization allows us to better serve your needs as our customers, and otherwise makes our oversight and coordination with you more effective and efficient. That takes care of the accountability and transparency part of agency services. But the largest number of the personnel that are involved in the program, and probably the most amount of work, is intended to ensure that your records management needs are met. So we have the Office of the Chief Records Officer to handle sort of the front-end aspects of the life cycle from a records management perspective. We have the Federal Records Center program to provide a variety of reimbursable records management services. David will speak to those in more detail. Tom referenced that we're moving away from a geographic organization and one that's more focused on customer-driven activities. One of the things we're hoping to do is to coordinate our activities. Paul and David will be working very closely together to find opportunities to ensure that we can serve your needs better, more efficiently, more effectively, that any oversight that we're doing is coordinated, efficient, and effective. We're looking to have an organization which is far more proactive and less reactive, one which, working with you, anticipates your needs and hopefully delivers products to you that can support your work much earlier in the process than we have in the past. I guess we're going to turn to Paul next and let you talk about the Office of the Chief Records Officer.
All righty. Good morning, everyone. It would not be a complete presentation by me if I did not first tell you what the 3 reasons why I get up in the morning are as it relates to records management. The folks that I work with, we're focused on supporting the business needs of federal agencies across the government. We're focused on assuring rights and assuring government accountability in records. And the folks that we work with in the Chief Records Officer organization, both here in the Washington area and around the country, we try to work hard with all of you to identify what the 2 to 3% of permanently valuable records are that your agencies are creating or receiving, so that we can bring them into the National Archives, preserve them, and eventually make them available to the American public and other researchers around the world. And a lot of what Tom and Jay have talked about, the transformation within the National Archives that we're undergoing right now, those 3 reasons why I get up in the morning and those 3 reasons why a lot of the staff I work with get up in the morning are still relevant and true to what we're trying to do in a 21st century archival and records management institution. So that is to say, some things remain the same. I think we need to rethink how we're doing some of the work that we're doing. Pat Franks is in the front row here. Earlier last year produced a report with IBM that acknowledged the need to have a chief records officer for the entire federal government. And actually, I think your report came out several weeks ahead of the transformation report. So we acknowledge the archivists and the work that we've done with the transformation, but also want to give you a nod as well for the call out that you had within your report as well. So as Jay and Tom said, I'm the first chief records officer for the federal government, and I've been doing this job since March. And what we're doing right now is getting our staff organized to be much more customer-oriented, customer-facing around a series of records management functions that we either provide directly to federal agencies or that we do in conjunction with federal agencies as part of our policy generation or policy and records management practice oversight work. I want to talk a little bit about what the responsibilities of the Chief Records Officer are, and some of these are items that we've already talked a little bit about. I am responsible for leading federal records management across the federal government and being particularly focused on the challenges related to electronic records. The staff that I work with are also focused on identifying how well agencies are managing their records, how well agencies are putting in place records management programs, evaluating how well they're working, identifying what guidance, policy, regulatory changes, perhaps statutory changes are required to make federal records and information management work more effectively for agencies. The chief difference with the Chief Records Officer position is that it is a much more outward-facing kind of position. It's much more focused on working with OMB, working with the Cio Council, working with Congress, working with GAO, working with public interest groups to make clear what NARA's interests and what the government's interests are in effective records management and good records coming to the National Archives. Again, going back to what I call the big three. So part of what my responsibilities are to spend more time and more effort working out in the community, both with agencies and those other stakeholder groups that I talked about, to make records management happen more effectively and be better understood in our environment. One of the other activities that I'm responsible for is serving as a ombudsman for the archivists with federal agencies. So as we're identifying issues that are of concern to federal agencies, I am to work with agencies, bring them to the attention of the archivist, find solutions to problems, work with my colleagues elsewhere in the agency services organization to find solutions to the challenges that you have, and make sure that we're having solutions that are focused on what the customer, the agency's needs are. So that's a major part of my responsibility. And the final thing that I'm also responsible for is being the chair of the Federal Records Council, and I know a number of the members of that council are here in the audience here today, and actually several of them are going to be presenting at different parts of the proceedings today. I want to talk a little bit about the organization itself using the chart that's up on the screen. On the far left is where the Chief Records Officer green box is, and there are two boxes off to the side. One I just mentioned, which is being the chair of the Federal Records Council, which is a group of cabinet-level records officers, representatives from small agency records officers from small agencies and other information management and legal counsel professionals with interest in records management. We come together to identify issues that are cutting across the federal government and the records and information arena, make recommendations to the Archivist of the United States about different policy needs that the agency needs to address, and also complete some work products on behalf of the entire federal records management community. On the left side is a responsibility I have in liaisoning with the Cio Council in conjunction with NARA's CIO, Mike Wash, who has also recently come into his new position. And it's from that Chief Records Officer organization that we do a lot of our representational work and advocacy work about records management. Beneath that green box, there are two sets of organizations. One is called the National Records Management Program, which consists of three separate teams or organizations beneath it: the Records Management Training Organization, the Permanent Records Capture Organization, and the Records Management Services Organization. And what those three organizations do is work directly with agencies on a day-to-day basis to support records management training needs, to identify what sorts of new curriculum we need to develop to meet the needs that agencies have, look at ways to deliver that training more effectively to agencies. So that's what the training group does. The folks who are in the Permanent Records Capture organization, they are focused on identifying what permanent records are out in agencies that need to be brought into the National Archives and preserved and eventually made available. They're going to be working very closely with agencies as well as the folks that are in the Records Management Services organization to work directly with the agencies to bring those records in. Within the Records Management Services group, we have a series of teams that will be providing direct assistance to agencies on scheduling and appraisal matters, technical assistance matters, supporting training, helping interpret NARA and other government-wide information and records policy and guidance and regulations, and generally being kind of one of the front-facing organizations with agencies to meet records management needs. So that's the organization called the National Records Management Program. Because of a series of GAO audits that we've had, interest from the Hill, and kind of the evolving nature of our business, we've needed to take a stronger hand in doing our policy making and our evaluation and our inspection roles, and doing those more effectively and more profoundly with agencies. So as part of the transformation, we are standing up a policy analysis and enforcement organization, which consists of three teams. And in this group, we've always provided policy to agencies. We've always done regulations. Back in the past within the agency, we've also done evaluations and surveys and those sorts of things. But with this transformation, we're building an organization whose sole capacity is to work those sorts of issues. So we have a records management policy team, which is composed of two groups, one that works on electronic records management issues. This would be the traditional folks in the electronic records management policy team at NARA that have generated the cloud computing bulletin, the social media bulletin, and a host of other types of electronic guidance over the last several years. We're going to continue to have that team surveying the environment, understanding what kinds of electronic records guidance agencies need, and then working to develop that. Within that organization, we're also going to have our traditional records management policy shop, which will maintain the Code of Federal Regulations as it relates to records management, identify different policy needs that need to be addressed from a more traditional records management approach, weaving them in with the needs that we see in the electronic records environment. We're also going to have an electronic records format team. This is going to be a team that is shortly will be developing and releasing a framework for agencies to use to understand what sorts of electronic record formats they need to have records in as they transfer them into the National Archives so that we can preserve them and eventually make them available through ERA and other systems. And that's a part of the organization that we used to have is within the electronic records management policy team, but since it's such a large component of the work that we're doing with agencies as it relates to like permanent records capture, we stood up a separate team to deal with that technical capability and figure out how to develop it. And finally, we have a records management oversight group who will be administering the annual records management self-assessments. And those self-assessments, just for information for those who are in the room from agencies who have not yet submitted their self-assessment data, it's due on June 3rd, so if you want to write that down, that would be good. We've been getting some early feedback on how well and how complete agencies have been in completing their surveys, and a week and a half out, we need some more responses. So you'll be hearing more from us about that. So that's part of what the Records Management Oversight Group is going to be doing, working the records management self-assessment, doing inspections of agencies. We have done one of the Office of the Secretary of Defense and the Undersecretary for Intelligence in the past year. We're in the process of doing one for the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, and we're going to be pursuing some other ones this fiscal year, but we're standing up an organization within the transformation to do more of these inspections and do them more often and try to help agencies understand the issues that they have in their agencies and how they can best address them through a series of recommendations and reports. Looks like a very formal hierarchical organization where we clearly have the records management services, face-to-face work with agencies separated from the policy analysis and enforcement piece, and they are separate and they do have separate kind of focuses and missions and that sort of thing. But there's an expectation using a lot of the different parts of the transformation as an agency that we have, that we are, for instance, an agency of leaders, one NARA, a forward-thinking agency, where we'll be using cross-functional teams to carry out a lot of the work that is found in each of these boxes. So we'll be continuing to do those sorts of activities where you're working with a primary contact within an agency, but you should expect to have other contact with different people within the Chief Records Officer organization as we go forward. I wanted to talk a little bit about what I think the three big things that you will see that are different from my perspective as the Chief Records Officer as we go through the transformation and stand up our organization and work more closely with our different units within the agency services organization. First, as I alluded to earlier, I think you're going to see more visibility from me and other leaders within the Chief Records Officer organization and across agency services. You're going to see that through the Federal Records Council, where you're going to hear about some of the products that we've been generating today as part of another session, but you're going to see more visibility from myself, from the Federal Records Council, from the leaders on the Federal Records Council, and the leaders within NARA, where we'll be raising the profile of records management across the government. Related to that, I'm going to be more available to work with agencies and speak around town and other places about the importance of records management. Just this past week, I worked with the Department of Labor and spoke to all of their SES, Schedule C, and other senior folks at their agency about the importance of records management, kicking off some work that John Sirocco, the records officer over there, has been trying to get done for a number of years. And I have time to do that kind of work with each of your individual agencies, and we would be expected to do that with you. And if you want to work with us, we're more than happy to come out to your agency and talk about those sorts of issues. We're also working with the combatant commands, working with trying to identify war records that can come into the National Archives and doing that same kind of high-profile work in that regard. So more of that high-visibility work will be one of the things that you will see more of out of the Chief Records Officer organization. Secondly, as I also alluded to, there's going to be an increased emphasis in coordination on policy development and enforcement of its implementation across the government. You know, we're very focused on explaining to agencies what they have to do and why they have to do it. We're also going to get much more focused on how you're able to carry out the regulations and the guidance that we provide so that you're better able to manage their record, better able to manage your records, so that we're able to work together to provide rights and interests and accountability for the government and citizens, and so that we're able to get our permanent records into the National Archives so we can make them available. And the other thing, this will be a segue into what David Weinberg is going to talk about, is, and Jay and Tom have already talked about, you should expect to see a better coordination, better communication, single point of service or single point of answers about records management issues from all of our staffs as you deal with them on records management activities. We're going to have staff that are going to be devoted to providing records management services to agencies. We'll have basic service that we provide that will be free of charge within our context of our appropriated funds, but there are also services that David Weinberg will be providing through the Federal Records Center program that we'll also be supporting so that you get the best service that you can to meet the records management needs that you have. And so you should expect to see more and better this sort of communication and coordination on service delivery in the near future, if you're not already seeing it right now through the transformation. So those were the remarks I had, and at this point I wanted to turn it over to David.
Okay, thank you very much, Paul, and good morning, everyone. It's great to be here to talk about the Federal Records Center program and as it fits within the transformation here at the National Archives. And I'd just like to build off the other speakers this morning that we're really excited about the work underway with the transformation. I think especially since we've gone reimbursable more than 10 years ago, we've always been, the FRCs, a customer-focused organization, but there have been impediments within the agency that prohibited us from really excelling in what we strive to do day in, day out, and that's serving all of you. I believe, and I think you'll see too as you come watch us evolve over the next weeks and months, that those impediments are breaking away, and we truly will be a very much customer-focused organization. Building off of Paul's comment, we're going to have greater integration with the Chief Records Officer's shop, and I think there'll be a lot of pluses for all of you as we begin to integrate, truly integrate nationwide, the Federal Records Centers and the CRO shop. So we're really looking forward to that. I often think about different viewpoints, different lenses that we look at how we do our work, and oftentimes we're looking at employee viewpoints, customer viewpoints. What I really want to talk about is the customer viewpoint this morning. And we believe within the FRCs that what you, our customers, seek is a consistency of services throughout all of the FRCs. And the reorganization that is underway now allows us to do just that. We are able for the first time to bring all the FRCs together to ensure greater consistency of services. We're also positioned so we can then develop new products and services to meet your changing record-keeping needs. I oftentimes like to talk about what is the FRCP value proposition. And for those of you who heard me speak, you've heard these comments before, but they really are important and worth repeating. That the FRCs, in providing services to you, it's a federal-to-federal relationship. I know a lot of times the agencies have some concerns about working with contractors and other non-federal providers in managing such a vital asset. The records that you create never leave government hands. We are easy to reach as far as contracting because we can be reached for services through interagency agreements. And we are expert in the knowledge of federal records management. We know you, we know your records, we know your agencies. So we think that really positions us to continue to serve, and again with the integration under agency services to serve you that much better. What I'd like to do now is sort of talk about the boxes under the FRCP on the slide behind me, and I too will go from left to right. The first one is operations. So for the first time we have clustered all of the record centers together under a single director of operations. all with the exception of the National Personnel Records Center, which I'll speak about in just a moment. But the big change, and especially for Washington, D.C. customers, is the Washington National Records Center that formerly reported to the Office of Record Services, Washington, D.C., is now fully integrated within the FRCP. So that does allow us to eliminate conflicts of services that we've had between all the record centers except for WNRC and WNRC now that they are all integrated. In addition, within the regional system outside of Washington, the record center directors formerly reported to an assistant regional administrator who reported to a regional administrator, and it wasn't necessarily a direct line between the record center operations in the field and headquarter operations reporting to me. That has been eliminated as well. So now we go to the, from all the FRCs to a director of operations, and that director of operations to myself. So it's a lot more direct line of authority, consistency of services that we're striving to move toward. The National Personnel Records Center, 2 boxes over, and I'll come back to this space management in a few moments. The National Personnel Records Center is very much as it has been for the many years out in St. Louis, with one exception. They are comprised under agency services of the Military Personnel Records Center and the Civilian Personnel Records Center. What has been stripped away and moved to a different program office is the archival function, which is going to be moving to research services, and preservation services, which is moving as well. So in St. Louis, under the director of the National Personnel Records Center, we'll be focusing with greater precision on meeting our federal agency customers who we serve in the MPRC facility. I would like to also use this opportunity to share a news flash, and if you could flip to the slide. This past Monday, we opened for business the brand new facility on 1 Archives Drive for the military function out in St. Louis. This is a slide day one when we opened up. So we are now in the process of moving staff from our Page Avenue facility into this brand new facility on Archives Drive. This facility, briefly, it's 475,000 square feet, half of which is going to be housing up to 900 people. 800 plus are NARA staff. The rest of the building are tenant agencies. It has capacity for 2.3 million cubic feet of archival records, permanent records, and temporary records. Again, archival records are those that have been accessioned and owned by the National Archives. Permanent and temporary are the records of the customers out in MPRC, principally the military services. The move is now underway, and we expect it to be completed in October 2012. So we're extraordinarily excited about reaching this milestone. It's been a long time coming, and as of this past Monday, they are open for business. Flip back, please. Moving across, customer relationship management. This is actually a new project we've undertaken over the last year, and now coalesces nicely under the new group called Customer Relationship Management. We have a team of 7 account managers, and many of them are out in the exhibit area, and I hope you'll stop by and visit with them during the break. They are there to be certain that you are 100% satisfied with the services you receive from the FRCs. They are there to advise existing customers of new services, and they are also there to seek out new customers who presently don't use the Federal Record Center. So we're extraordinarily excited about having our team together. 2 are based here in Washington, others are based out in the field, and they are here principally to serve you and your record-keeping needs. So again, I hope you visit with our account management team out in the exhibit hall during the break. Moving over to the right hand of the org chart under the Federal Record Center is business development, and their sole focus is to develop new products and services to meet your record-keeping needs. I'll talk about 3 that they're working on right now. Some have been under development for a little while, but I can give you an update on the status. We've talked for a while about the EFRC to manage temporary electronic records in a secure cloud environment. We have a firm timetable in place to stand this up. We are awarding contracts for a developer this fall. We will award a separate contract with a cloud provider because we do not want to own the asset. We want to have a flexible, so to speak, leased environment. That will be awarded in March of 2012. We will complete the development in August of 2012, and the EFRC will be in production in November 2012. We are working presently with a TRICARE management activity and piloting some of the needs out in our Denver operation, and that has been going very, very well, and we're very pleased about the development with the EFRC. We've also made significant investments, and it still continues to grow, our document conversion services. Again, this is all under the auspices of business development. Two different types of document conversion services. One is scanning for easy access and rapid retrieval. Customers who use that, as an example, is the Fish and Wildlife Service for fish migration, DEA for investigative information, GSA for building drawings, and the FAA for aircraft drawings. The other line of business under our document conversion services is scanning to initiate business process, extracting data from the scanned information, social security information, name and date of birth, and other data to facilitate a business process. We're doing a big project now with the Veterans Benefits Administration in claims processing and processing official personnel files for GSA, for the National Archives, and for the Air Force. So that's a growing business as well, and that way we see really are poised with a lot of exciting developments. Just to give a case in point, our document conversion services last year for fiscal 10, as far as revenue, earned $2.5 million. This year so far, it's doubled that to $5 million. So this business is growing and really does meet customer needs. And what we've heard back from our customers, they've been extraordinarily satisfied with the services. So we're really looking forward at expanding our document conversion services. The third item I want to talk about is customized records management services. And this is really a shift in the FRCs providing consulting services to our customers. This could be involved creating file plans, writing record schedules, establishing records management procedures, and this was work that was formerly done by the records management shop both in Washington, but more so out in the field. And now we're moving this into the FRCs so we can provide a suite of services from consulting services to hard copy storage to electronic record scanning services. In your packets, you have one of the flyers about our customized records management solutions. I hope you'll take a few minutes to look at that. And Pat Marek, the coordinator of the service, is also out in the exhibit hall, so I hope you will visit with her as well. So we're very excited about the many changes going on in the FRCs, but the true test is, will you be equally as excited in the weeks and months ahead? I hope the answer is yes, and we look forward to learning more about your reactions to the reorganization of the FRCs, the creation of agency services, and the transformation at the National Archives. Thank you very much, and I'll turn it back to Tom.
Well, thanks. We have about 15 minutes or so. If you would like to ask any questions or have any comments for Jay or Paul or David. While you're thinking about a question, I also want to mention one other aspect of the transformation within the office of the COO, within my office. Now it is where NARA's own records management program is placed. And our aim is to become a model agency records management program. I think, as many of you are probably aware, we're kind of like the proverbial shoemaker's family. Our self-assessment, let's just say, isn't at the top of the scale. We need to get there. And it's not going to happen overnight, but we are committed to having a model corporate records management program. And our program consists of two pieces. There's kind of staff who are going to do nuts and bolts, advising program offices on how to manage their records, create schedules, et cetera, and especially deal with email and attachments issues. And the second aspect of our corporate records management program is working kind of doing research and development and testing of new tools and techniques so that we can kind of serve as a laboratory. And our corporate records management staff, especially with the testing aspect, is working very closely with Paul and his staff. So we hope in NARA over the coming years we will generate out of our own model corporate records management program some best practices and new tools and techniques that'll help us and help you. Yes, there's a question there. Could you just say, if you wouldn't mind, state your name and...
Hi, my name's Nancy Hunn. I'm from GAO. And this question's for Paul. Paul, I'm very interested in hearing from you about, and it's a segue from what the COO just said, what are some of the technological innovations that you're pursuing in your office? And can you give us some insights into how they are going to help us manage the barrage of records that are coming our way?
I'd like to talk about two different pieces that we're working on. One I alluded to with the electronic records format team, where we're developing a framework and a model for identifying what transfer formats the National Archives will take to bring in permanently valuable records into ERA and other systems within the agency. That's been a huge issue with agencies to understand what kinds of formats they need to get their records into so that they can come into the National Archives. So that's one aspect of what we're working on. From the policy perspective, we're also looking at different approaches to managing email across the government and in specific agencies. And we have a series of pilot projects we're figuring out how to form right now to instantiate an approach which we're calling a capstone approach to email, where we would look at how to capture email at different parts of an organization, at the top of the organization for those that are permanent, and then figure out how to give guidance and regulatory direction to agencies to deal with other kinds of lower level materials so that you're not having to try to implement 3,000 different dispositions within an agency, within an RMA, which makes smoke come out of the back of the machine. So we're trying to figure out how to do those sorts of policy sorts of things. And then test them with agencies to see how they work, which those are the kind of two policy technological issues that we're focused on. As a general matter, we're looking at different ways to work with agencies and provide guidance and direction so that they can more easily manage their records. A lot of the guidance that we have developed and a lot of the statutes that we have are based on a 1950s model for how records management is done, and we need to think more about how to manage information as opposed to records and figure out how those two things connect, and where they do, figure out how to do it much more effectively. So related to that is figuring out how to automate a lot of what we're doing. There's no huge cache of staff in agencies to manage records. And it doesn't make any sense to, kind of pave the cow paths and kind of automate systems or processes that are mainly human-based. So we need to figure out how to have deploy technology in smart ways to better help agencies better manage their records, but then also help us, get the permanent records in, and then also do the business needs and rights and accountability piece. So I think you're going to see a lot more guidance that deals with that sort of issue and kind of has a broader view than how we've looked at records and information management in the past decades, frankly. Mm-hmm.
Yes, question
Hi.
there.
I have a question. This is Jane Alperson from the Department of Justice. I was looking at the red flyer, Mr. Weinberg, and it's very interesting. Is this staff, this expert security cleared staff, is it on board now?
What we are doing is basically growing the service, and the arrangement we worked with Paul's shop is that we have some staff on the FRC payroll, and then as we need additional staff, we will basically use some of his staff, and we will then do a cost transfer. Because again, the FRCs are all revolving fund. We receive no appropriations. The entire part of Paul's shop does receive appropriated money, so we have to be certain that the money is accounted for and flows. As we grow the business and we see the demand is there, then we will then bring on permanent staff to be able to serve the customers. So as we develop new products and services, we want to find a way to sort of test the waters a little bit. And this is a very conservative way for us to basically bring expert staff and test the waters and then ultimately grow the business. So we're really excited about the arrangement we worked out and looking forward to this taking off, because in the past we have not provided this service, and our goal was to really say, how can we provide a turnkey suite of services to meet all of your records management needs.
So then once you have a reimbursement agreement, then the people will be there?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Part of what we're doing in the Records Management Services organization is standing up a team that's going to be focused on the general records schedule and really re-looking at what it is currently and what it needs to be in kind of a 21st century way so it's implementable but also consistent with all the laws that govern a lot of the stuff that's in the GRS that cover records that are found in multiple agencies. So I think you'll be seeing, I know you will be seeing significant changes in the GRS in the coming, I'm not going to say it's going to be weeks, but it's a months and years kind of thing. But that's one of those strategic decisions that we've taken that we need to deal with is with that specific area with the GRS. The other thing that we're seeing increasingly, which goes to another part of your comment, is agencies that have like functions across agencies and trying to figure out how to help agencies better manage records that are either created or received in like multi-agency environments. And I think we've developed guidance and put that out in the past several years on that issue specifically, and I think that's an issue that we continually need to keep going back to figure out what kinds of new and better solutions agencies need to get to the issues that you raised.
My name's Rich Wajuda. I'm with Army. Dave, this question's for you, and it's down a little bit in the weeds. You had mentioned that at One Archives Drive, at your new location, you have some tenant organizations. Are those folks there to support NARA? Or are those possibly users of your services that are working together with you? How is that working?
The tenant agencies are the existing tenant agencies we had in Page Avenue in our old facility. So I believe, Army may have staff there, VA may have staff there. So it's those who need daily access to the records. So when we designed the building, we designed it with space in mind for tenant agencies for regular users. And in fact, you can sort of think of the building, while it says the National Archives and Records Administration, National Personal Records Center, it really is a, quote, multi-tenant building, and the leases or the occupancy agreements with the tenant agencies are directly with the General Services Administration. So again, we have about, I think, a half a dozen or so tenant agencies in the building.
Hi, my name is Jessica Brown. I'm here from DHS. I have a question for Paul. You mentioned we're going to start receiving electronic records self-assessments. Should we expect that annually, aside from the self-assessments that we already receive?
You should expect to get, we'll do the self-assessment every year. That's the assessment we started on May 2nd, I believe it is, and it ends on June 3rd, where we do the online, we send the link out to the online survey, and the records officers complete it and resubmit it back to the National Archives with the documentation. We'll be doing that each fiscal year and then reporting out on what the results of that are. Within that survey, we'll have core questions every year so that agencies can track how they're improving in their records management within their organizations, and we will most likely have special study areas each year, and we're going to be working on identifying what those are with a good amount of lead time so that agencies can understand what that area is and can prepare to answer the questions most effectively. And also we're going to be increasing the amount of documentation and validation we're going to do with the surveys. So with this survey this year, there's parts of the answering that you need to do requires the submission of documentation around policies and schedules and transfers and things like that. Okay. But we're going to be doing it every year. That was your basic question.
Also, how far out from ERA stand-up should we start expecting that assessment?
Actually, those two items are separate, but let me talk a little bit about what we're doing with the ERA stand-up right now. Mike Carlson is working with agencies. He works with me in the Chief Records Officer organization and with the staff that's in the Chief Records Officer organization. With each of the CIO Act agencies right now, we're in the process of scheduling user adoption is what we call it with each of the CIO Act agencies between now and the end of November, and Mike has probably met with most of the 30 CIO Act agencies that are there. Starting in July, we are working with all of the approximately 220 other federal agencies, independent agencies, bureaus, sub-departments, to get them to adopt ERA. And what Mike and the staff are doing, they're going out and having kickoff meetings, identifying what records in the agencies need to be scheduled so the schedules can be done in ERA, and then identify how to use ERA to transfer paper records to NARA, and then how to use ERA to transfer electronic records into the ERA system itself. So I know a number of you know Mike because he's been around the Beltway talking to different agencies and asking what it is that they have to transfer and working on those sorts of issues. So you'll be seeing more of Mike and more of the staff within the Chief Records Officer organization working with you directly on how to start the transfer process.
Yes. Okay. Matt Staden from the Navy. Just a quick curiosity question. Are you going to be expanding the training that you give in KA 1 through 6 to start including more electronic records and record keeping processes? Maybe a broader certification, RA certification in general? And 2, has anybody ever given any thought to creating a records management series with Office of Personnel Management? I know most of us here are 343s, 301s, IT people, archivists, and generally late to the meeting, and we became records managers that way. Or in my case, wanted to break into civil service, and that's how I ended up here.
Sounds like we need to train you up, Matt, huh? Yeah, absolutely. Let me talk a little bit about the training, and then I'll talk about the job series piece. And I think the Archivist is going to mention it in his remarks this afternoon as well. On the training piece, with that records management team that we've stood up within the National Records Management Program, part of what that team is going to be responsible for is the continuous updating and kind of focused updating of the content in the KAs so that it does become more and more focused on electronic records management issues and actually ERA sorts of issues as well. We're building that into the training too. We're in the process of updating our electronic records management classes that are completely focused on that as a specific subject area. So you're going to see new and better and more content both in the regular series of knowledge areas as well as in those special interest classes that we have, and then some of the other activities, other classes that we have will also have a greater concentration on electronic records sorts of issues. To the certification piece, we've been approached by different organizations about how to perhaps have a more formal certified records management program with ARMA or some other kind of organization, and we're just like in the preliminary stages of exploring how to do that. Frankly, we want to get the transformation done, get in place the staff that we need to have to help update these classes on a more regular basis, build some new content in the special interest classes. You also alluded to the job series issue. OPM during Sunshine Week back in March put out a request for information of agencies about how they viewed creating a job series to deal with records management, FOIA, and a whole host of other kind of information management related topics. In conjunction with Annalisa Archer, who's our Chief Human Capital Officer, we provided comments and information about how the National Archives views this issue through our Archivist and Archive Specialist series, as well as some competency work that we've done within the records management program based on a lot of good work that we saw done at the CIA, FBI, and some other agencies. We conveyed all of that to OPM. We also told OPM that we thought it was in the government's best interest to figure out how to have an information management job series, because the job series, as you just described, lands up being in the administrative series in the 300s, or it's in the Archives and Library 1400 series, which is a little harder or more arcane for agencies to use within their agencies. And we made the case that we need to have people that do information management policy and understand information management issues in a way that is not IT gearhead development kind of stuff, that it's much more thoughtful about how to make records management policy work to meet business needs, rights and interests, and permanent records. 3 reasons why I get up in the morning is why we need to have the information management job series. And that's the case that we made to OPM. And they're in the process right now, as of about 10 days ago, still evaluating the feedback they got from a number of different agencies, a number of whom are represented in the room. And we've gone to them and said, we expect to be a leader in this activity and want to work with you on that because we have a large constituency of records officers that are looking to NARA to help lead in that effort. So I would expect that we will hear from them shortly.
I think we have time for one more question, and then there'll be, obviously you can find us and other NARA staff to ask questions during the rest of the day. So one more.
My name is Frank Ligorio, and I'm from the Executive Office of the United States Attorney. And my question has to do with what I'm hearing is it sounds like that you want to simplify things going forward. Does that mean from a strategic approach then, given electronic records and the complexities that represents, that you'll then be in favor of what's commonly known as a big bucket approach in retention schedules and the collapsing of things to make it easier to group things?
We're on record and we approve big bucket schedules. As all of you, okay.
We even have some of our own.
Yes, we have our own big bucket schedules as well. So the short answer is yes. Having said yes, there are also some needs to be able to capture and make sure permanent records are getting to us that we see some challenges in doing it with permanently valuable records, but we think there may be some other strategies to deal with that issue. But we are definitely, from a strategic perspective, in favor of big bucket schedules and making the processes easier to implement in agencies, which is what is consistent with big bucket schedules.
Well, I want to thank you all for your participation in this session. Sorry we ran out of time. You of course, can contact Paul, David, and Jay through email. You can find the addresses on the website, and it's probably included in the program somewhere. So again, thank you very much, and don't get up. Next session's coming up.